here with us today, and I'm pleased to have you here as well. I want to let you know that this is a community center that this community has dreamed about for many, many decades. And finally, in 2019, we were able to put the money together and have this community center built and open. This is our cultural center, our recreation center, our education center, and our health center. We never had a recreation center like this in our community before, and we talk about equities. And our community came together to build our own recreation center, and we're very, very proud of this center, and we're proud to have you here today. So it's my privilege and honor to introduce to you the next speaker, Nikhil Sawant, who is the Democratic nominee for the 1st Senatorial District of Philadelphia. I just want to tell you a little bit about him, and I'm going to introduce him. He is the co-founder of Reclaim Philadelphia, and the former leader of the Leader and Bernie Sanders 2016 presidential campaign. Mr. Sawant is a father, writer, community organizer, who was the first Asian American to be elected a Democratic ward leader in Philadelphia. He's proud to be raising his son, Ishan, in South Philadelphia, and his wife, Shannon, who lives, and his wife, Shannon. In 2009, he organized boycotts with Unite Here against luxury hotel developers to fight for the rights of housekeepers. In 2013, he won back jobs for 1,000 cafeteria workers and noontime aides who have been laid off because of Corbett's budget cuts to the Philadelphia School District. So without further ado, Democratic nominee, Mr. Sawant.
Thank you, everyone. So thank you, John, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you to my fellow leaders in the AAPI Council, Leadership Council for Pennsylvania. So grateful to have Andrew Yang here to welcome Mr. Yang to Philadelphia, to Chinatown, which is in the heart of the 1st Senatorial District, for which I'm running to represent. I'm really grateful to have one of the most prominent representatives of the Asian American community nationally here. And I just want to note that Mr. Yang is going from here to help flip a Republican seat, one of the last Republican House seats in Philadelphia. Mike Doyle is running to represent this seat in the 170th. It is held by a Trump Republican now. We can win. I just think that's the true expression of solidarity and just a real paying attention to local politics. It's really excellent that he's doing that. Mr. Yang is also someone whose campaign changed policy discussion in the United States by introducing nationally the idea of a universal basic income. This not only was a novel idea to many people, but it actually took hold during the COVID crisis when many representatives were proposing cash payments or direct payments to people, including Senator Kamala Harris, hopefully our next vice president, who's proposing $2,000 a month in transfers to people. So it's an amazing idea that comes out of just his creativity and the creativity of our community. And so the AAPI community, I know all of us here, all of us across the state, are looking for bold ideas like this for recovery and growth. We are also looking for ideas like that to be given and to be granted to people who don't often have access to those benefits. Immigrants with unclear immigration status or without documents, who have trouble because of language access. We here in the 1st Senatorial District here in Chinatown recognize that Philadelphia is increasingly diverse. There are 200,000 foreign-born people in Philadelphia. 40% of them are AAPI members, so this is just an increasingly diverse city, and it needs that kind of representation. We know that it's going to find that representation in a Biden-Harris administration. And finally, we need an end, and I know we are going to see an end to fear and terror and xenophobia and racism that this administration is practicing. We saw it come to the doorstep of one of our own leaders here in Philadelphia, as many people know, Nancy Nguyen, the executive director of Viet Lee, one of the leading Vietnamese rights organizations, a leader in the Asian American community and for immigrants' rights generally. was arrested a couple weeks ago by Philadelphia police in collaboration with federal authorities for the mere fact of protesting a new director of ICE. This is just an example, just a small, in a way, just a small version of the fear and terror that has been wrought among our communities across Philadelphia, across the country, and we need a change to that. We know that a Biden-Harris administration is not only going to put an end to this, but it will be a welcoming and diverse and inclusive administration, and we can fight with them to enact a welcoming, diverse, and inclusive country. So I'm really excited to be here with everyone to be fighting for that. So thank you so much. And I'm really glad right now to be introducing our next set of speakers. Anna Perng and Brad Baldia. Anna is a disabled Asian American advocate. Throughout her education, she struggled with selective mutism but did not receive support due to lack of language access for her immigrant parents. When Anna became a parent to two wonderful children with multiple disabilities, a local community health clinic asked her to help establish a safety net for immigrants with disabilities. For the past 5 years, Anna has organized the Chinatown Disability Advocacy Project to help teach families in the greater Philadelphia area about their civil rights and empower them to advocate for change. Brad Baldia currently serves as the president of the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce in Greater Philadelphia. Brad works extensively with Asian community organizations on a local and national level. He served 2 terms in the Pennsylvania Governor's Advisory Commission on Asian American Pacific Affairs, and he's on the DE Advisory to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. Brad, along with Anna, they are co-chairs of PAAPIs for Biden, and he is the chair of the Filipino Americans for Biden Eastern Region co-chair. So please first welcome Brad Baldia.
Good afternoon. As we all know, Pennsylvania is the battleground of battleground states, and we are the front line of the Democratic blue wall. We lost Pennsylvania in 2016 by only 44,000 votes, less than 1%. I've had the pleasure of working with Anna Perng for several presidential cycles. We have a lot of other leaders in the room that work diligently to support Democrats and other presidential candidates. This year I want to talk about what we've done as a community here in Philadelphia and across the Commonwealth. We have had numerous Zoom events so that we can be secure and also continue to advocate for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Whether they're focusing on different ethnic communities or specific issues like small business, religious communities, disability, healthcare, the environment, and so on. We have done weekly phone banking for months, from Tuesdays to Sundays in 10 different Asian ethnic languages, and we've done over 50,000 calls and reached out to our own communities in advocating and telling our communities why Joe Biden and Kamala are so critical to get out of our current situation and to improve our country. I want to briefly recognize we have established a Pennsylvania API Leadership Council. If you could briefly stand up. The Leadership Council members. Thank you for all the work that you're doing across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. All of this, the volunteerism, the advocacy, the trust that has had to been established could not happen without your leadership. Yet we need more people to help to put, distributing on-the-ground lit drops, for canvassing like this weekend. We only have 16 more days. We only have 2 more weekends to change our country. And we know that APIs will be the margin of victory, can be the margin of victory for Pennsylvania. Join us today, volunteer, we're gonna talk more about ways that if you're not already engaged, but you know, we need to do everything we can and then dig down deeper to make sure and act as if we're 15 points behind. We cannot take anything for granted. We need to elect Joe Biden as our next president and kick Donald Trump out of the White House. We are very privileged to have Andrew Yang here as our first Asian American presidential candidate, and he's made history. We are very honored to have him come here to Chinatown and rally behind as a community, work to elect Joe Biden. Now I'll turn the floor over to my amazing co-chair, Anna Perry.
Our speakers today have covered Andrew Yang's many amazing feats, and I have the honor of introducing Andrew. Nikhil mentioned that he had founded nonprofits providing charitable assistance. Andrew Yang founded Ventures for America, which connects young professionals to innovative companies in economically challenged cities. He ran for president under the slogan, Make America Think Harder, or MATH. And as Nikhil mentioned, he has advanced the discussion around universal basic income. You know, but I suspect the most important title that Andrew has is dad. As some of you know, Andrew has 2 children, one of whom, Christopher, is on the autism spectrum. He has described his wife, Evelyn, as CEO of Team Christopher. As some of you know, I'm the parent of 2 wonderful children who have multiple disabilities, including autism. So I guess that makes me CEO of Team Sammy and Ethan. As previously mentioned, I helped found a support group for immigrants with disabilities and their families, the Chinatown Disability Advocacy Project, with Roger and Carol helped support. We understand that right now this is an election that needs our attention and needs our hard work. We are facing many challenges, families in our situations. As Andrew and Evelyn and families like mine know, that when children graduate from school, they exit special education services, and many families call this the cliff. You end up losing all supports, and it's very hard to actually get any support to help you live safely in your home and in your communities. So when Andrew and Evelyn talk about how our society should be doing more to erase disability stigma, to support people with disabilities and their caregivers, especially during this pandemic, it really hits home for me. I am so grateful that Andrew is amplifying the struggles that so many of us are facing but never seem to be a priority. That is until this administration, which we hopefully will be Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They will be champions for us in education, disability rights, healthcare, affordable housing, and more. Please join me in welcoming Andrew Yang to Philadelphia Chinatown.
Hello, Philadelphia Chinatown. Future voter indeed. It's great to be here with you all. Thank you, Anna, for that incredible introduction. And Evelyn is definitely the CEO of our family. I'm grateful to her every day. Moving to a day like today, she's with the boys. I think they're going for a hike. And though she works harder than anyone I know, our son Christopher is on the autism spectrum, which makes him him, which is the most important thing. But he does require more energy, I think, than the ordinary 7-year-old. It's a thrill to be here with you all on the cusp of an historic election. We probably said that about every election, but I think we know that this election is different. And this election, I believe, is going to be different on multiple fronts. But one front I think it's going to set a new high water mark for is the energy and turnout among the Asian American community for Joe and Kamala. And there are a whole host of reasons for that, all of which are correct. Like, we need to come out for Joe and Kamala. with this thing. But I will say, it invigorates me as someone who ran for president to see our community come together in this way and to be so energized for an historic candidate in Kamala Harris, who's going to be the first Asian American vice president. And that's going to happen. We're going to make that happen. Am I right? I want to take a moment just to observe this environment we're in. This is the most beautiful building. It's like this is my first time here, and I feel like I've been missing out all this time. I just want to say how much credit we should be giving to the folks who made this building happen, because this is an environment for children to come and play, learn. I was in a holding area, it was a classroom, there's some learning going on. So this environment is the kind of environment that makes young people feel like they're cared for, that someone is invested in them, that someone wanted to dedicate years of work and economic resource to create an environment that they could feel safe, be able to play. And that's really what's at stake in this election, really. Where are we going to invest in ourselves, our communities, our families, in a way of life that will actually put our kids and the next generation on a better path? I know that's what Joe and Kamala want. I know that's what we want. And we've already seen what Donald Trump offers. He's offering something that is bleak and dark for Asian Americans and for all Americans, that know that we have to start trusting each other and work with each other if we're going to ever put our country on a path to recovery. Now, I'm in my 40s, and when I was growing up, my parents did not say much about American politics. The child of immigrants, first generation of my family, I'm not even sure if they voted or knew what was going on in elections. Like, we did not have those conversations in the Yang household. And the message I got was not to go into politics, frankly. It was to get good grades, keep my head down, try and get a good job, and to create a foothold for our family in this country, largely around economics. Like that was what my brother and I got. We're from a very academic family. My brother's a professor. My father became a professor after working as a physicist for GE and IBM. And so there's like an academic strain. There was not really a political strain going on. And I know that my experience is not mine alone, in the sense that many Asian Americans who grow up in this country do not think that American politics is where they should be dedicating their energies, much less their careers. And this is something that we have to change as quickly as possible, because Asian Americans, in my mind, are like a sleeping giant. I hope we wake up this cycle. Like this is not like a sleeping thing where, we're going to stay asleep. I believe we're waking up. I think one of my roles is to wake us up. And I've been incredibly heartened by the fact that when I was on the trail, I would see Asian Americans who would come out and they would tell me, I got excited about politics because of your campaign, and now we're energized, we're going to vote, we're going to volunteer. If we can make that happen in our community, we can change the course of history in this country, just like that. Like, you're right now. And just using Pennsylvania as an example, this is a very, very tightly contested state. And Asian Americans could very well be the swing vote in Pennsylvania. Not just in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, Florida. You could go down the list. That Asian Americans are nationwide, let's call it 6% of the population, but we have been punching below our weight politically because we turn out at lower levels, we volunteer at lower levels, we donate at lower levels. And so there's been this dynamic that's built up where political campaigns don't pay as much attention to our community as they should. And this is the dynamic that we all have the chance to change right now in the next 16 days. If Asian Americans turn out in Pennsylvania, very well it could swing this state. If we do the same thing in communities around the country, we can transform the political, not just perception, but reality of Asian Americans in this country, just like that. That's why I'm here today. I hope you will join with us in not just voting, not just being here today, but telling your friends and family that right now may not be even registered to vote, and say, look, this is important. We have to raise our hands and say we are just as American as anyone else. We have just as much of a say and a voice in the future of this country, and the only way we will make that voice heard is if we vote right now. So You actually can still register people to vote today and tomorrow here in Pennsylvania. I was so thrilled to hear this. So after you leave today, what I want you to do is to think about 5, 6, 10 people that you know may not be paying as much attention as you are to this election, and just ping them. Just call them, text them, DM them, Facebook message them, whatever, and just say, hey, are you registered? And if they aren't registered, just send them the link, iwillvote.com/PA, and be like, look, you can register, it's very easy, and just keep after them until they vote. And if they're excited about it, then ask them to do something similar. If we do this in our community, that is history in the making. That is what we have to make happen right now. When I was growing up in the 90s, Asian Americans were actually quite split politically. We were almost 50-50. It's like 55-45 Dem. And he's shaking his head. He's like, oh, we do. Obviously right now we're like, was that a thing? Some of you remember. And in large part because many Asian Americans voted on one issue. And that issue was taxes. They would say, look, as long as I keep my taxes low, I'll be all right. And so they tended to veer Republican for that reason. I'm describing not just friends of mine, but family members. So this is not, I have no judgment. This is just something that was true of our community. But that has changed over the last number of years. The last cycle, Asian Americans went for Democrats 75-25. So that 50-50 has shifted very quickly. And I believe it's going to be even higher now. Because this administration is no friends to Asian Americans. I'm sure we've noticed. We've all seen what's gone on, not just on our TV sets, but in our communities. We know that this is not the administration that's going to serve our community. I think it's going to be even higher than 75. It's going to be in excess of that for Democrats if we can just get our people to the polls and vote. So that is what we need to do. Are you with me? Let's make sure that Asian American turnout is higher than it has ever been in this cycle right now in 2020. What do you think, Philadelphia? If we do that one thing right now in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, this could be the generational awakening of Asian Americans in American politics that we have been waiting for our entire lives. And we have the power to make that happen. Right now, today, tomorrow, over the next 16 days. If this is something I can play my part in, I am going to be so proud. Because when this community wakes up, the sky is the limit for what we can do. I'm going to share a story also from my upbringing, and then I'll take some questions. My father was an inventor for GE and IBM. When I was a kid, I thought everyone's dad had a PhD, because you don't know, it's like kid. So you're like, what's your dad's PhD? And then someone's like, here's what his PhD is. And I was like, oh, what did I do wrong? And I was like, very young, scrawny Chinese kid, figuring things out. So I was 13, 14, I come home, or my father comes home from work, and he's very, very angry. And I asked, why are you angry? And he said to me, when you can't invent anything anymore, they make you a manager. So in the lab, all it is white managers and Chinese engineers. And so I heard this as a teenager, and I thought, wow, is this true? Is this how it works? Is this what's going on? And that was one of the cues I got in my adolescence, that there was a sense many Asian Americans have that we are allowed to become this successful in the United States of America, but we are not allowed to become this successful. I heard that as a kid, and I thought, that's not right. I just don't believe that should be true. And that's one of the reasons I ran for president, was to demonstrate that members of our community, anyone in America, can contribute and lead at the highest levels of our country. And that is what we can demonstrate through activating our community to vote this cycle. There is this perception that we've been fighting for our entire lives, that we are somehow less American than other people. And we have to change it. It has to be on us in our community. We cannot ask someone else to change it for us. It is for us to change it through our action, through our commitment, through our raising our hands and saying, we matter in this country, and our vote will be expressed. What is at stake is that my kids do not get the same message I got when I was 13, 14, coming home. This is for us to change right now. And again, if I can play my part in changing this for your kids and mine, I will do everything in my power. And I ask you to join me in doing the same to make sure that Joe Biden is the next president of the United States and Kamala Harris is the next vice president, so we can turn this page for our country and actually give our kids a future we can be proud to leave to them. Thank you very much. Thank you, Philadelphia. Thank you, Chinatown. It's great to be here. I feel like I'm in a better version of something that I experienced as a child because I don't remember my court quite this nice. We have some questions, I think, and I think we have a microphone.
Hi, welcome, Andrew. I'm Carol Wong, the director and owner of the bilingual preschool and after-school program, actually in the Crane building on the 3rd floor.
Wow.
I'm so happy that you talk about children and education. My question is, what is your plan, and what is Joe Biden's plan to help the economy? Because so many of us are hurting, whether it's small business or just, doing our jobs.
Thank you for the question, Tara, and it's near and dear to my heart on several levels. One, the bilingual education business in this building is so heartwarming. I mean, talk about doing something positive in the community. Let's give Tara a round of applause just on that sort of work. I know there are kids here helping all the time. It's also near and dear to me because I've been a small business owner. And it's not just you and the other small businesses here in Chinatown. Small businesses around the country are being threatened, and many, many of them are struggling to ever reopen their doors. And businesses like yours that might rely upon some kind of in-person proximity, if you're a parent, you say, well, this was a great offering pre-pandemic, but now am I really well served by sending my kid to sit perhaps in a classroom indoors, one-on-one with teachers? And parents around the country are making that trade-off. Evelyn and I are making that trade-off. We look up and say, is this what I should be doing for my child? If you extrapolate through the economy, you end up with widespread havoc and damage to small businesses in particular. Joe and Kamala have a real plan to help small businesses. A $150 billion package that's going to be dedicated directly to small business owners and calibrated so that frankly, communities of color are able to access it at the same level as other communities. Because in the first PPP, many small business owners of color had a hard time accessing those resources. It was big companies, it was well-connected companies with commercial banking relationships. So they have a plan that I'm very proud to champion that's going to change that and get funding to folks on the ground where it's needed, where it belongs. And one thing I've said to them, and people agree, is that it's not necessarily that loans are the answer in a lot of these cases. Because the fact is, if you're a small business owner and I give you a credit line or a loan, it still may not make sense to reopen your doors because you've been accruing expenses for months and months. A lot of restaurants and small business owners are looking up and saying it does not make sense for me to reopen because I'm never going to dig out of this hole that we're in. And so the goal has to be not just credit lines, but grants and forgivable loans where, look, if you operate, you reopen, you employ folks, then this loan gets forgiven and it disappears. That's the kind of dramatic measure we're going to need to help small business owners get back on their feet. I'm sorry that this is such a tough time for you and for so many other small business owners. But I know Joe and Kamala have a plan and dearly want to help business owners like you get back on your feet.
Joe Biden គាត់ជាប់ President តើគាត់មានផែនការអ្វីខ្លះចំពោះការស្អប់ពើរបស់ជនជាតិអាស៊ី Asian American Pacific Island សូមអរគុណ
My name is Paul Chu. I'm the president of the Philadelphia Cambodian American Community. This question is, how does Joe Biden plan to address anti-Asian hate?
This is a personal question for many of us because so many of us and our families have experienced this rise in anti-Asian hostility and animosity as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and President Trump attributing it not just to China but to anyone of Asian descent through terms like Kung flu and the China virus. And many Americans have taken this as a cue to attribute the coronavirus to Asian Americans, and we've all experienced that. We felt that. I felt that. It starts with a landslide victory for Joe and Kamala that show that racism is unacceptable and is un-American. Having someone like Kamala in office, who is herself Asian American, I think will be very, very powerful tone setter and change. Particularly because Joe and Kamala are the polar opposite of Trump in terms of how they talk about these issues and message the fact that we're all American and we need to come together and not have us turn against each other. There was a recent bill that was sponsored by my friend Grace Meng that came out and condemned anti-Asian racism and said, look, this is not acceptable. And I was perhaps not, I was surprised, but then I thought maybe that's what I should expect, that this was not unanimous. To me, saying, look, anti-Asian racism is wrong, who the heck could be against that as like a statement? And it turns out that 100 plus Republican legislators did not want to sign on to what was essentially like a value statement. It didn't even have like this, this whole raft of measures after it. And that's because anti-Asian racism has actually become politicized because of this president. And if you get rid of Trump in a dramatic fashion, which I believe we can do if we all come together and work hard for it, November 3rd, then I believe anti-Asian racism can become depoliticized and you can run the same kind of measure of the vote. And I believe it would be nearly unanimous that we could condemn anti-Asian racism as wrong and something that has no place in this country.
Hi, Andrew. I read your book, The War on Normal People, during the summer, and in the book you talk about social credit. Why didn't you promote that as much as your other ideas during your campaign?
Well, thank you for reading my book and for asking such a detailed question. So for those of you, this is not a spoiler, for those of you who have not read the book, I ran a nonprofit called Venture for America that I founded for 7 years or so. And one of the things that I thought we could use in this country as a way to incentivize volunteerism and positive social behaviors and create more varied touch points in the economy. Because my great fear is that our economy was evolving in ways that were going to push more and more people to the side, and we needed ways to bring them back in. So there was a system that Robert Kennedy championed in the 60s called time banking, where it was essentially a spurt of volunteerism. So if I helped my neighbor, I would get like a time credit, and then I could trade it to someone else who would then help me, and you could then reinvigorate various community activities. So I suggested a social credit system that you could do this sort of time banking digitally. You can tie in NGOs and nonprofits, and it would be like this fun way to encourage and revitalize civic engagement and volunteerism. So to your question, why did I not talk about it more on the trail? It's in part because of what we just experienced just now, which is it took me a little bit of time. It was sort of like this complex idea that required, a little bit too much build up, and it confused people. And so my campaign team came to me and said, "Hey, love it, but you should probably leave that for the book." And I said, "Okay, I'll listen to the professionals." So that's why I think that we should be experimenting in this country with different forms of currency in a huge way. For example, South Korea, there's one province where they just started giving people money that can only be spent at local businesses within a 2-month time frame, and then it disappears. Why did they do this? Because they wanted to try and revitalize businesses in communities. Like, it's that kind of innovation we should be pushing instead of right now having a one-size-fits-all approach. Because, like, ideally, if you want to reinvigorate local economies, you would have ways for those communities to help themselves. So I'm still a big believer, but you know, it was a little bit too complicated. But thank you for the question. I mean, I appreciate it a great deal. And it looks like my team's telling me that I have to leave. Philadelphia, Chinatown, let's make history together. We have 16 days. We have today, we have tomorrow. Let's register people. And I'm going to hang out over here and give out some Biden-Harris paraphernalia. So I'll see you over at the desk. But let's do it. Let's fight for it. Let's fight for this country of ours. Thank you.
I think I'm done. I just wanted to